I got overnight. I was a pariah. I got booted out of all the groups. It was horrible, it was absolutely horrible. And all I'd done was I'd met you in a public place in a different part of the big, huge pub, which had 3 sections to where they were. And I think they saw me as a threat, because the minute I saw you as a human being, that threatens their whole psychological outlook.
I wanted to talk to Kimberly today because we met in very strange circumstances. Kimberly was part of what you might call the Let Women Speak groups, and she was a rad femme, and she was involved in gender critical politics. And we met in Dublin, didn't we, Kimberly?
We did.
Yeah, and it was all a bit weird because I'd gone to Dublin because I wanted to meet the Mams for Trans Rights, and I was with the counter protest group, and I wanted to go because I knew it was going to be big, and I wanted a day out, you know what I mean? I thought this is going to be a bit of fun. I'll take my camera, get some content for me, social media, and I was with the trans rights group. I was pretty much with them all day, and then I realised I'd been talking to you on Twitter. I can't remember. We had some kind of altercation, didn't we? Or usual shit you get on Twitter, and you'd sort of DM me a few times, and we'd had a few to and fro. So when I was in Dublin, I remembered that you'd said you were going to be there. So I thought, right, I'm going to go and try and find out where the Let Women Speak Terfs have gone for a drink, and I'm going to meet Kimberly. So can you remember, I just remember walking into that pub. Actually, I met 2 women on the way that verbally abused me in the street. And then I went to the pub and I recognised you straight away. I don't know why, because I don't know if, I don't know if I'd seen a picture of you somewhere, but I just knew it was you.
Yeah, I mean, and I think also just to clarify that it was a massive pub, and all the women from Let Women Speak were in a back room, and I'd said to you, "Well, I'll meet you at the front," and I'd said, "Please don't go to the area where the other women from Let Women Speak are," which you said you wouldn't do, and you didn't do. So yeah, I met you in a completely different part of the pub to where everyone else was.
Yeah, well, I was at the bar, I think. I just stayed at the bar on a stool, and we just had a drink there. And then it was a bit weird because some people asked me how it felt like to be around those people being trans. And I thought it didn't really feel that weird. It felt like having the wrong football scarf in the wrong pub. Do you know what I mean? That's how it felt.
Yeah. Yeah. And then what was really disappointing is one of my, someone who I thought was a friend at the time, came and dragged me away under false pretenses, saying I want you to come and meet someone. And then was like, "Oh, I had to get you away from him. Was he hassling you and all this?" And I was thinking, I'm quite capable of making a decision for myself whether I want to sit next to someone or not. And obviously, I'd planned to meet you. So we did meet for a brief time, and then I was literally kind of dragged off.
Yeah, I was just looking for because I'm sort of Googling stuff as I'm talking to you, and I'm trying to find the Let Women Speak Dublin post because she always hashtags everything. So it's really funny looking back on it now.
I'm sure I want to remember.
So yeah,
I just lost it. Yeah. And then that other lady came and spoke to you, who was being friendly, the one who later got taken ill. We were having quite a nice chat. And then, of course,
I mean,
yeah.
Because people have asked me, because when I talk about it, they sort of say, "Well, why did you go there?" Because obviously you'd think they all hate trans people, but it's like people are not really like that in person, are they? They either ignore you or they. But I remember there was an incident when I was at the bar. Do you remember the guy?
Yeah.
One of the Terf's husbands came.
He was a husband, yeah.
And he was being a bit familiar. He was like asking me if my tits were real.
He was being antagonistic, wasn't he? Because myself and the other girl who I didn't know, we were being quite friendly and inquisitive in a positive way, and then he came over with a bit of an angle and a bit of an edge.
Yeah, he was asking me quite personal questions, and the bar staff recognised. Do you remember the bar guy leaned over and said, "Are you okay?" Yeah. And I think that's when we sort of, that's when I realised you were all right, because you sort of stood by me in that when you recognised that kind of misogyny. So that's how we met. It was like 2 years ago now, isn't it, or something? I don't know exactly, but Yeah, and do you remember the lady that was really drunk? She was so drunk and she fell off her stool onto me. So I had to come and find you. You'd gone back with the Kellie.
I'd gone back to the back room where they all were.
Yeah.
So obviously you'd come into that room with the best of intentions because somebody was ill. And then obviously I went and made sure she was okay.
One of the things I was wary about, and I did warn people about, and some of the people that were going to the event, is I'd noticed a lot of the Irish far right were posting about Kellie's event, and that really worried me for both sides, because they can be really antagonistic and really, they're the people that go with cameras to try and make something happen, like make some altercation happen so they can film it.
Right.
So that's something I was worried about. But when I was with you and I was with them women that spoke to me, I didn't feel antagonized. It was only when I left. Do you remember when I was leaving and we had to go outside? And there was one of the women, then she said, "That's that pervert off the internet."
I think she actually was. I remember it being worse than that. I remember her just going up to you and going, "You're a man pervert," shouting that at you. Really so it wasn't even that she was talking. Yeah,
but they some of them will think, even though that's a public place and that's just a pub, they think I was invading their space.
Well, this is the thing, and I remember afterwards, because after I sort of got excommunicated, which is a whole other story, I did stay in touch with one of the Terfs, and we were having a chat about it, and she said, everyone's upset because you let him into a woman's safe space. And I'm thinking, this is a public bar in the middle of Dublin with CCTV, with staff, and with any man who can walk off the street going in there. How can they say it's a woman's safe space? It's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean, they are quite territorial, and obviously they would have thought quite affronted by the fact I would have the confidence to do something like that.
Yeah.
And
the thing is that one of the Terf's husbands was there. Well, he was in a woman's safe space, but he got a free pass.
Well,
so
there's always
you know what I mean? There's loads of men in there. It was it's a public bar, big bar in the middle of Dublin.
So to
say it's a woman's safe space is just a bit ridiculous, really. And
they accused me of spiking someone's drink, didn't they? That lady was really
drunk. They did. I mean, because the first I heard of that was after you'd left, and one of the Terf said to me, it's actually the one whose husband it was like, this girl's collapse, Fred spiked her. Just it was assumption that no one even said, could he have spiked her, or it was a Fred spiked her. And I remember thinking at that point, like, number one, that doesn't make any sense, because why would you spike someone and then immediately leave to go and get a plane? And number two, that's just like dark. That people would accuse you of doing that.
They've always got to think of the most damning thing, and it's like they either call us paedophiles or perverts, or like extreme. They call us groomers.
Yeah.
So it always has to be extreme.
Well, they said that you'd groomed me.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to get. But actually, when you think about it, if there is any sort of manipulation, and I don't like to use the word grooming, because grooming means to me only one thing. It's not like it's a sexual thing, and I don't. But what I'm saying is they. I'm not saying you were naive or you were stupid, but what I'm saying is it is like a sort of. It draws you in, and I wanted to ask, like, how did you first meet up with people that would have eventually gone to Dublin and gone to these events? Was it an easy thing to get into, or did you think?
It wasn't anything I kind of sort of thought, right, that's it. I want to get into that, and went straight in, sort of at that activist level. I can tell you kind of how I got involved, and it was a series of phases, really. So it kind of started actually pre the pandemic, where I'd kind of got involved in the feminist section of Mumsnet,
right? And
my interest in feminism was nothing to do with anything trans. It was more to do with the fact that when I'd gone back, when I sort of had my family, and then my husband had become a stay-at-home dad, and I'd gone back to work, and I saw a lot of, I saw how society's roles were very much like, the woman's the carer, and the man goes out and earns a living. And me and my husband had done the opposite of that. So we'd been gender non-conforming in terms of the social roles we played. And that made me kind of think, well, for me, feminism is about not being constrained by the social roles that society imposes on you. So I suppose that's the angle I'd come in at. But then as I'd sort of spent more time on sort of Mumsnet, and there's a very active, well, I think it's called the Sex and Gender Board now, but that's a kind of a forum where a lot of people can, get into turfology, if you want a better word.
I do.
And then I ended up going, sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, it has been mentioned to be Mumsnet quite a few times by different women, and I think Sex Matters, Helen Joyce and Maya Forstater did post on Mumsnet and encourage people to post on Mumsnet a lot instead, because if they want, it could be something that could be anonymous, I suppose, like away from normal.
Yeah. Well, I think I don't know about Sex Matters. I know that Let Women Speak. I think Kellie Jay Keen was banned off there. But just to kind of backtrack, before this is going back to way before, even before the pandemic. We're talking about 2018.
Yeah.
There was an event that was publicised on Mumsnet. That was a feminist event, which I went to. And there were some people there who were still quite key in that movement, but it was very much before Let Women Speak had developed or Sex Matters had developed. So I remember being at this event in Manchester where Kelly was there. I think Venice Allen, Julia Long.
So people quite close to Kelly, aren't they?
Yeah. And that was sort of where I suppose became more introduced to people who were kind of, I suppose, openly turfy, anti trans women. So that was obviously quite some time ago. Yeah. Then the pandemic came along and all that stopped. And I remember thinking, I'd been introduced to sort of Manchester Feminist Network, and someone said, join this, and everything stopped because of the pandemic. So when the pandemic was over, I thought, I'll kind of look that up again.
Yeah.
So I started going to Manchester Feminist Network, and then I got to sort of know more people through that, and then eventually sort of got more. They're not really an activist group, I wouldn't say, but through them I met people who were in more activist groups like Northern Rad Firms and Women's Rights Network.
So I mean, you must have made friends there. I mean, it can't have been like a lot of people just think TERFs must all be just these like go around trying to tell trans women they're men and that's all they do. But if you're going meeting people socially, then you must have had like people you liked and people that were your friends.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, absolutely, because and it's very bonding being in an activist group, because what's that famous saying? There's nothing like a common enemy to unite people.
Yeah.
So you have this very kind of. Almost like love bombing. It's very, very false.
It's confidence building. Confidence building. I mean, I'm not to profile anyone, but I suppose if you've had children and you've stayed at home, maybe that's not you, but I'm thinking about other women, and then there is this group of women that have bonded, and it feels powerful. It feels like an illicit club. It's like almost like you're sort of the Avengers or something. You know what I mean? Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
It does, because you feel like you're in a movement, you're fighting for a cause that you believe in, but, and I mean, it is very bonding.
Yeah. Sorry, I was going to say, when I spoke to like Iseult White, who's quite close to J.K. Rowling, and she told me that it's like it's almost the way she was talking about it was like she feels like there is a politics there. There is something that women want to talk about. There are these issues about single sex spaces, and there are these issues about privacy, but they all get wrapped up in it because if there is, I mean, there's this culture sometimes of shutting people down because they want to talk about certain things. So when you have felt silenced, when you have felt like your issue was played down because of political correctness, as they used to call it, or wokery, if you feel like you wanted to talk about something and the world was telling you, no, you can't talk about that, and then suddenly there's this platform and Kellie Jay Keen says, you can come up and say whatever the fuck you like and we will applaud you for it. That is powerful. That's really powerful.
It is, because I don't know that I was ever really anti-trans so much as I was anti the suppression of free speech and seeing people being cancelled, and that really ground my gears. And then I think you do begin to feel part of this community, and we've all got busy lives, and perhaps you begin to feel a bit disconnected from people, people move away, whatever. So perhaps there was a bit of a part of me that was like, I want to be part of this group.
And another thing that happens that I noticed, like, because when I was never really an activist. I'm more of a think of myself as a performance artist. So I would deliberately do things that are visual, and I think it's very easy to become an enemy of people like that, because they want you to exist. They want you to be the crazy trans rights activist, and they want these. And it's like a lot of the media that Kellie puts out on social media is of the trans rights activists, like looking all mental and crazy when they're shouting in the street. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that plays into the idea of us and them. And obviously, the far right do that a lot on social media. They'll say they'll show a picture of somebody with 25 facial piercings and a mohawk and go, "Is this the future you want for your children?" You know what I mean? It's like, but nobody's really seeing that in real life. They're just seeing pretty much boring, mundane, ordinary people. So I think it really excites people to see extremes of things. And Kellie is an extreme of things. I don't want to dwell too much on Kellie, but it is. Yeah. But she was the catalyst for how we met. So. And but the movement is, I think, is the Women's Rights Network? Were you involved with that?
Yeah. I was that, and that was probably the group that I was most involved in. And the Manchester branch of Women's Rights Network was quite embryonic when I sort of joined it. So I was able to kind of, I suppose, become reasonably prominent in that group. So, for example, before I got excommunicated, I was involved in their Twitter account. I was involved in quite a few of the events that they went to. Parkrun and stuff. So,
I mean, did you sense that things were picking up pace? Because I think there was a point where things seemed to get more, because Let Women Speak stuff was getting more onto TV through the channels of GBnews and Talktv. And did anybody ever ask you to be a spokesperson, or, be a more prominent member, maybe? I don't know. Well,
nobody asked me to. It was all kind of voluntary. And I suppose I had made what at the time felt like pretty solid friendships with some of the people leading these groups. So no, I mean, they don't have to ask people to do things, because people want to do things. They're willing to get involved. Yeah. If they're not, then they shouldn't really be in an activist group.
I'm just thinking, like, some people listening to this, like some of my, say, trans friends or people who are trans, they'll say, well, why did you go along with this? It's obvious that it's a fascistic movement. It's obviously they just hate people. Why did you stick to it? What was it that kept you in there? Because obviously it's not like there was a moment. It wasn't like you just met me and that was it. That was your mind. But I'm just trying to get across to people that it's not like you're an evil person, or it's not like you're a bad person. I never thought, even when I talked to you on Twitter, I didn't think that. But I think some people would say, well, why Freda? Why are you talking to this person? Why would you bother? Because these people are far right lunatics. That's the attitude that people would have. So I suppose what I'm asking is, like, was there a moment you thought, this is a bit weird? You know what I mean? This is a bit.
I think. Well, one thing I do remember being really weird is, so when I was sort of speaking to you on Twitter, and the reason I started speaking to you on Twitter sort of more privately is because I suppose I was quite interested to find out more about you, and you were like the enemy, this sort of pantomime villain almost. So I was a bit like, oh well, let's look at this person everyone's saying is this bad, mad trans person. Because I'm not a hive mind person, as you'll know. I like to think independently. And then people were in the Women's Rights Network WhatsApp were kind of talking about you quite a lot. So I was saying, I've been talking to, well, they would say Fred, so I called you Fred then, even though your name's Freda. Sorry, I've lost my track of thought there.
No, we were just talking about like the moment. Was there anything that's sort of extreme?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I remember what it was. And then we got a message from the chief Terf saying we shouldn't be speaking to any trans rights activists because they'll all be sitting there having a wank, talking to you. Thinking, I've got a Terf.
Who said that? Oh my God.
The chief, I won't name names, but the chief Terf of Women's Rights Network in Manchester.
Is there a sort of network what you might call head girls? Do you know what I mean? Like where it's a bit...
Well, Women's Rights Network's got a number of branches, and each one will have a chief Terf. So this was, I'm not naming names because you said you don't want to name names, but it's the chief Terf of Women's Rights Network in Manchester. She sent us all a message saying they'll all be having a fiddle, don't talk to them. And I saw that for what it was, which I saw that as manipulation, that they obviously felt threatened by the fact that well, I was talking to you privately, and I think one of the other ones was talking to you, but more antagonistically on the public chat.
Yeah, well, what I think I was known to them because I had been to Let Women Speak in London, and I circled them with police caution tape. And this was when Sarah Jane Baker, you know, the prisoner that she was sent back to prison basically for saying punch your Terf in the face, which she shouldn't have done. But I don't believe she should have been sent back to prison. So I recorded her voice and I circled them with a speaker playing Sarah Jane Baker's voice while she was in prison. That was the point of what I was doing. So they have a video of me doing that, and they tried to make out that I was violently threatening women. But no, I was just making a point that you don't shut down somebody's free speech, and you can't because I've got a recording of it.
Well, that was after Dublin, and obviously when I'd been chucked out. But and then I remember another quite prominent Terf who I'd become quite good friends with, and she knew that we were speaking, and again I was told, he'll be having a wank, thinking, I've got a Terf. Those were her actual words. And at the time, because she kept saying, block him. And I remember thinking, so I'm the kind of person, if I'm told to do something, I do the opposite. Think, why are you trying to control me? I'm going to do the opposite. And I remember thinking, no, I'm not going to block him now because you've told me I've got to block him.
Well, the thing about me is I've always researched. I've been involved in researching far right, and I'm not calling you far right. When I say that, I mean people on the right that network, and it wasn't women. I wasn't looking at Let Women Speak. I was looking at Tommy Robinson. I was looking at the EDL, and it's because my brother was radicalized. My brother was in the NF, and my brother ended up going to prison, and I wanted to try and understand it, and that's why I started doing that. And I worked with a couple of organizations. I wasn't I wasn't like going undercover or anything. I was just researching online stuff. And that is why I was fascinated, because when I came out as trans, and I realised it was some of the same people, some of the same networks were sharing Let Women Speak stuff and Sex Matters stuff. They were people that are involved in a group called Arts of Oak. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Arts of Oak.
I've heard of Arts of Oak, yeah.
Arts of Oak, which Tommy Robinson started and abandoned, and then I think it's just a YouTube channel now. But what they do, some of those people, they go and find asylum hotels, and they take cameras and they try to find out where they are, so people can, well, for whatever reason really, they just like to know where they are, and then that can lead to attacks. So that's how I got into it. But when I discovered this sort of, I thought of it, and I don't know if you agree with me, it felt like a way to radicalize women into a far right frame of mind, or and I use the words far right loosely because I know it's a bit more complicated than that. But did you notice that crossover? Because it's become more and more obvious, hasn't it?
I have to say I didn't notice that crossover. No, I think most of the women I met in that movement were very much single issue, which was that they didn't believe that women could be people who've been born male, XY chromosomes, however you want to say it. For them, it's, you know, if you're born a female, then that's the only way you can become a woman. And I didn't see much crossover into other forms of ism, discrimination, whatever you want to call it. I have to say
that's what brings me back a little bit to Dublin, because that is where I really saw it, and that is why I went to Dublin, because the group I wanted to meet, because I wanted to interview the lady, was the Mums for Trans Rights, because they have children who are trans, and they get called trans by Munchausen's by proxy or whatever it is. I can't remember.
Transhousens.
And they just can't, they just get attacked all the time. But I don't want to get into a debate about trans kids or anything like that. But
what I will say about I mean, it's an empty question about the fascism angle. What I will say is, I believe it becomes a bit of almost like a proxy war, whereby if let women speak go and go out into public place, anyone with a political agenda, I can't say it, political agenda, is piggybacking on that. So I think you then get other political movements, like Hearts of Oak, or like on the other side as well, like Antifa, like I think even socialist workers, they all come along because it's like a big free for all for everyone to come and it's almost like Kelly's opened the door to the playground, and they're all thinking, right, let's go and say our piece.
Yeah, I was just going because I'm speaking about radicalization, and I'm just looking on my desk at Sarah Fillmore, who's part of Fair Cop, and she put a book out with Al Peters, who is Mole at the Door or Moral at the Count or whatever.
I know these people.
And the book is it's like a load of stories of peaking. They call it peaking. So that I think that's when we say radicalization, when we say joining this far right thing, they call it peaking. And so did you experience that? Did people tell each other stories about? I suppose that's what Let Women Speak is really. It's about a peaking exercise, isn't it?
Well, I think they've already peaked long before they go to Let Women Speak. I mean, because by the time you get to go to Let Women Speak, you're quite far into it. It's not something that you go to if you're just dipping your toe into the waters of being a TERF, I wouldn't say.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I don't even know what peaking means, really. Did I ever peak? I don't know. There wasn't like one moment where I had like a light bulb go off and I go, I'm a TERF.
You see, one thing I will say about Let Women Speak is they are a bit less duplicitous than some political TERFs, because I'm looking at Sarah Fillmore's book and I'm thinking, this is it's honest about its intentions. It's about trying to say, but underneath it, I've got J.K. Rowling's Women Who Wouldn't Wished, which is exactly the same book. It's exactly the same kind of peak. It wants to peak you and it wants to radicalize you, but it does it in a more insidious way as feminism, which it obviously isn't, because for me, I mean, I don't know how you feel about feminism, but I could never associate what J.K. Rowling stands for as feminism.
I think it is a form of, you've got different forms of feminism, and at the end of the day, if some people want to say that their definition of woman is someone who's born with a vagina, that's up to them, and I don't have an issue with that on its own. It's the shit that then can lead to that I have an issue with.
But I think it's this idea that you do I'm not speaking about you personally, but some of the women, do you think some of the women genuinely believe that this movement is going to liberate, let's take the trans women imprisoned thing.
Yeah.
Do you think, do they genuinely think that women's lives in prison and the prison system is going to be improved by taking out one trans, whether I or you agree with a trans woman should be in prison or not? It's not going to do anything. You know what I mean? It's not.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think they would counter that with there's a woman who I think she was part of Keep Prison Single Sex who said that she had to go on the coil because she was worried that she'd get impregnated by a trans woman in a prison. So I mean, throughout history, the people in prison who can impregnate and the people in prison who can be impregnated have always been separated, haven't they?
Yeah.
So I can understand there's an argument to say continue to do that because we don't want people having babies in prison or being raped in prison.
I think
it can happen.
Yeah, I think we can all agree on this. When it comes to isolated incidents like that, we can all agree, that there has to be safeguarding. But the point I'm making is that these issues, when GBnews are suddenly talking about the welfare of women in prison, when Lee Anderson is talking about the welfare of women in prison, when has he ever done that before? I mean, I
think also focusing on prisoners to say whether something would or wouldn't happen. With the greatest respect to most prisoners, the prison population, you're going to have some bad eggs in there, aren't you? Because these are people who are flaunting the rules of society, which is why they've been in prison for whatever crime they've committed in the first place. I mean,
it's like all of the formulaic arguments. They avoid the real issue. They for me they do anyway, because if the point of feminism or women's liberation or whatever it is to free us from, say, what they would say is patriarchy, it seems to suck up to patriarchy quite a lot to get what it wants. How many of them begged Elon Musk to bring back Graham Linehan? Do you know this? What use is Graham Linehan to their movement? So
he's a bit of a mascot now, isn't he? He's like,
yeah.
don't know, they love him.
Yeah. I'm just looking at today there was Let Women Speaking Nottingham.
Yeah.
And I'm still seeing some of the same faces that you might recognise. Yeah. And they're still doing it. So, they must enjoy it.
Yeah. Well, it's like a day out. It's like a day trip. And I remember when I went to I only went to one Let Women Speak because Dublin actually missed it because you remember my plane was delayed. And there's a party atmosphere. People are getting their coach together, having a few drinks. I mean, the social aspect of this movement and the extent to which people join it and kind of get sucked in on that, I don't think can be underestimated. And I know Women's Rights Network very much almost market themselves as that, saying, hey, come along, we'll have a cup of tea and a cake and meet up. I think that's quite appealing for a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, I know that you did sort of after we met in Dublin. You didn't just suddenly stop seeing them. So I mean, did you? You did describe to me that their attitude towards you changed pretty quickly.
Yeah. Well, I got overnight. I was a pariah. I got booted out of all the groups. It was horrible. It was absolutely horrible. And all I'd done was I'd met you in a public place in a different part of the big, huge pub, which had 3 sections to where they were, and I think they saw me as a threat because the minute I saw you as a human being, that threatens their whole psychological outlook.
Well,
that
is part of it, I suppose. Because I remember when I was in London and I went to Claire Fox's events and I went to Tuxton Street. I had debate. Well, it wasn't really a debate. I met Ellen Joyce and I met Maya Forstadt and I had that discussion in the Institute of Economic Affairs. And I still stand by everything I said there, but I didn't want to play it as a debate because I'm not there to break bread with these people. I'm there because what Helen Joyce famously said, and it should not be forgotten, is that trans people are a problem to a sane world. So my mission is to be that problem, because if you start trying to find a solution to a sane world, you have to eliminate a lot of people. So my point, so I turn up in fishnets and a short dress, and it's like, I know what I'm doing. I didn't expect Maya Forstater to take a photo of my dress and put it on a bloody Twitter feed, but there you go.
And sometimes I can see why you do that. Sometimes it's like you want to poke the bear to show everyone what the bear can be like.
Yeah, exactly.
But I sometimes think, Freda, you've probably got better ways of spending your energy.
Yeah. I know that.
There's only so many times you can do that. Yeah. It's like it's diminishing returns, isn't it?
But don't you think it's funny that like she was on stage with me and she obviously she's referred to me as a porn addicted pervert or something. I can't remember what it was.
Oh yeah.
So like a few months later, she gets caught looking at Harry Potter fan fiction literature on public transport. And
I love that. I love that happened.
And then she tries to pass it off as research. I mean, for one thing, why can't you do your research at home?
Yeah. I think that was that the whole all the things that happened from my time in that movement. That was the funniest thing because it was just so hypocritical. And whoever was behind her on that train who saw that and took the picture, like, well done to that person, because otherwise no one would have known. But yeah, she's going on about you being a pervert and whatnot. And she's sitting on a train reading what's it called, fanfic porn or something.
Fiction porn. Anyway, but I was going to say there are. What I was saying to Helen, one of the takeaway things I wanted to say is, look, the people that follow you, the men that support your movement in public, they fuck me in private. And I said it out loud. You should have seen Peter Tatchell's face, because I'd gone through half a bottle of red wine at this point, and he's like, have you seen that?
You sure it was only half?
Yeah, well, no, it was Barolo. It was really strong. But the thing is, though, with all that, I just wasn't taking it seriously because I don't see it as a serious event. And I went out that night with Mark Glendenning, we went for a meal afterwards, and he just thought the whole thing was hilarious. He was the guy from the IE.
Yeah.
And the thing about this is, I still get DMs. I used to. I don't really use Twitter like I used to, but you get DMs from guys flirting with you, and they say, "Oh, I saw you at that. I don't think you're that bad, Freda. I think you're all right." And these guys flirt, because it happens with loads of my trans friends, and these are the guys that follow Tommy Robinson. Do you know what I mean? It's like insane.
Yeah. I mean, I look back now and I just see the whole movement's just ridiculous, and it's full of mainly middle-aged women who just it gives their lives meaning and purpose, and they feel like they're part of this big movement, and they feel like that they're a spy, or they're in some sort of war, and none of it's real. I mean, there's real wars going on where real people are getting killed and whatever, and I just think now there's just so many better ways for me to spend my energy or put my energy into.
Well, I mean, I was going to say that because I think it would be quite easy to get into a movement like that, because it is exciting and it is illicit and it does feel like you're being naughty. Have you seen that video of the two Terfs, and they're really excited in the car? They go, "Oh, we've been turfing." And it's just funny.
I think so. I mean, I've not been in the movement for quite some time now. I've tried to sort of like move on.
But the problem is,
it depends when it was on. If it was more than like about a year ago, I probably haven't seen it. If it's less than a year ago, I probably haven't seen it now.
I mean, it's all right laughing about it, but it does have political consequences, because the point is to make the trans exclusion be politically expedient, which is why you see Donald Trump now signing executive orders to take trans women out of sport. I mean, it's not I don't know how many trans women there are in sport in America, but do we really think the grab 'em by the pussy guy is suddenly interested in supporting women in sport? You know what I mean?
Of course not. There's a serious problem. To be honest with you, I try. Sorry, go on.
So I was going to say, there's a serious problem with misogyny, systemic misogyny in sport, where the coaches are sexually abusing young, girls getting into grassroots sport. That is happening. Nobody's talking about that. And that is why it's dangerous. That's why I'll always, if I could ever debate or talk to J.K. Rowling, I just dismantle everything she says, because I'm not interested in whether she thinks I'm a woman or not. I'm not interested in what trans means. I'm interested in the fact that you have orchestrated an organised and prolonged attack on a minority. That's what I'm interested in.
Yeah. I mean, what I would say is when I was in the Women's Rights Network, and you might think that, Women's Rights Network, if it's a feminist movement, yes, you might think, okay, they have a legitimate interest in whether trans women are women, but you'd also be expecting them to be involved in other things affecting women. But no, it was purely all about trans, almost like, obsession. I
remember when we talked on WhatsApp and stuff, and we'd have discussions about quite philosophical stuff about what it means to be a woman and stuff like that. At the end of the day, I know what biology I've got. Do you know what I mean? I don't need somebody to tell me the reality of biology. But I can't not be who I am. So I think a lot of people, because of the media, they think that trans women just walk into spaces and expect everybody to bow down to them and call them princess. Do you know what I mean?
Well,
I don't mind if you want to do that. Brilliant, but
yeah.
You'll
laugh, Freda. I saw Kinky Boots the other day at the Palace Theatre. That was I had some trans women.
It's frightening.
It did frighten me, but what's interesting is because they got the pride flag out at the end, and it's funny because when I was in that movement, I felt threatened by the pride flag, and I'd have an almost visceral reaction to seeing pride flags. So I'd bristle. Whereas now I was like, yeah, fine, whatever, and they kind of gave a shout out to trans and non-binary people, and I thought, great.
This is why all the little hate groups and the people that are trolls, they always find images of cross-dressers and ugly looking transvestites, and they say this is what trans women are, these, and it's always the most, like the whole Buffalo Bill thing, and it's so if you have to go to those extremes to demonize somebody, then they must be fucking brilliant. I don't know what it is. Well,
do you remember the calendar? Kellie's calendar. Were you in that one? There was one calendar you were in, but it was called He's a Man, and it had a picture of a trans woman in a real kind of wig half slipping off, and This is like a caricature picture of a trans woman every month, isn't it?
You see, the problem is I've given them a lot of ammunition because I was doing OnlyFans and stuff like that, and people stole that stuff and people screenshot it. I knew they were going to do that, but the point is, it doesn't say anything about me really. If you're sharing an image saying, "Look at this horrible thing," you've saved it, you've shared it. It is as much a part of you as it is a part of me now. And the point of that is, like, I'm not bothered. So what is the function of you sharing that? And obviously the function is to demonize. And
well, I think one thing that where I didn't sort of I didn't agree with the movement is there's a lot of prudism. Interesting because of what Helen Joyce was reading on a train, but there's a lot of over kind of prudism and the fact that you were involved in certain scenes where obviously fully consenting adults, so they can do what they like, but they made a big deal of that and then turned that into you being some sort of sexual predator. And I remember thinking, well, no, actually there's no evidence this person's a sexual predator. You've got your own sexual preferences. And at one point they were trying to get you fired from your job, and they actually asked me to, because I work in sort of employment matters, to write to your employer to complain that you shouldn't be doing the job you were doing at the time. I remember that was something that made me think, hang on a sec, this is going too far. And I didn't do that.
I mean, if the people that talk about free speech are campaigning to have people removed from employment for things they do or say, then that is, insidious.
Yeah, it's a bit hypocritical, isn't it?
What happened was, what really happened was, I was working for the ambulance service, as you know, and I'd done like Trans Day of Visibility. I'd been seen at Pride events, and obviously I'm very visible on Twitter, and I was saying quite extreme, when I was reacting to people, I was very, I didn't mince my words, did I? So what actually happened is all this put me on. My manager said, we've had all these complaints about you, but we have to investigate them. It doesn't mean you're guilty, we just have to investigate them. And I went into a meeting with my managers where they pulled my Twitter up onto a screen, and they said, did you call this lady a dickhead? And they were saying, well, when you wear that uniform, what does that tell the public? And I was like, you know what? Anyway, I was off work with stress for like 6 months, so I decided just to leave because I just thought I'd worked through COVID, and that really messed with my head. They fast tracked us through training, and I was doing blue light within about 2 months, and seeing it wasn't that people, like when people talk about COVID, it wasn't like I saw people dying or anything. It was the fact that it was so short-staffed, and we had to do so much in such a short space of time, and we get abused in the street for wearing masks and stuff. So anyway, that's I digress. But that whole thing with the Terfs and them reporting me kind of did me a favour, because it put me off the road for like 6 months. So, and then
there you are. You should be thanking them. I mean, that's the other thing that got me as well, is because you were made out to be like this, sexual predator, paedophile, pervert, whatever. And I'm thinking, well, nobody knows for sure what someone has or hasn't done in their life. But the fact that you must have been quite heavily vetted to work in a frontline NHS role makes me assume that you haven't got criminal history, because even for those kind of roles, presumably even the tiniest thing that's going to come up on a DBS.
Yeah, but anybody.
But of course, they wouldn't think of that, would they?
Exactly. But the only reason, like I said, they used that word is to be as extreme as possible. If they were being clever about it, they'd invent a crime or something, like fraud or something that is believable. But they'd never do that. It's like. One of the worst things is, when you read things about yourself online and you start to gaslight yourself because they make up stories about you, and you go, did I do that? Like when...
Yeah, I mean, you were the real bogeyman of the bogeywoman, even the bogey non-binary. You were this kind of it's almost like the personification of all their fear and all their hatred was kind of poured into this one real life person, which was you. And I think to a certain extent you accepted that role and you played with it and you engaged with it.
With fire though, isn't
it? But and you were seen. I mean, I remember after Dublin, because I was excommunicated, but that kind of it took a while for some of them to kind of, I suppose, go from seeing me as a friend to seeing me as an enemy. and during that time, I was still speaking with some of them. I remember one of them saying, "Oh, you're so dangerous, and such a dangerous man, and you're going to do this, you're going to do that."
Yeah. Well,
they were giving you a lot of power that you didn't have, I think.
I mean, whenever I went on TV, I was on, on the radio. They would just take the clip and they would just put all the pictures of me from, all the sexualized images of me under it. So they'd be like TV producers ringing me, and they say, "Who are these people? Like, why are they doing this?" I said, "Because they're insane. That's why."
I think the caricature of the the short skirts and the nutsack from the AIDA. Yeah, there were loads. There were quite a few of these caricatures, weren't there? And pictures that people were spending quite a lot of time, drawing.
It's amazing how.
What a hobby to have.
It's amazing because somebody drawn a penis onto me, like a really. They spent a lot of time on Photoshop making it look realistic. And there's nothing I can do about that. And the only guilty person there is May Forstater, because she took the picture looking up my skirt. And not only did she do that, she zoomed in and then she shared it to her followers, knowing full well who her followers are.
Yeah. And they were desperate to get a glimpse of nutsack.
Yeah, so they can't get enough of that Freda nutsack. But
Helen Joyce is probably writing porn stories about it. Probably,
Yeah. They're obsessed with people's bodies in a way that is, like, do you remember what happened with the Olympics? And, they did that opening ceremony, and there was a guy who was there was a drag queen on it, and like a lot of performers, and one of them had a rip in his tights, and everybody's zooming in. They were all zooming in on it to try and see if there was a penis in there.
Well, you know why? Because that's for them. That's the fundamental thing, isn't it? That they're saying, "Oh, that person's saying they're a woman, but they're not because they've got a penis."
Yeah.
So I suppose they're going to be always trying to find evidence of seeing, bits of your body that.
The thing is, I've got a very feminine penis with a ring through it, with a sapphire in it. So there you go. There's no rules. Yeah. But I was going to say, I've not spoke to you for quite a while because you told me about, is it, the meeting you went to in Scotland?
Philia. Yeah. Oh, that was hell on earth, that was.
What happened there?
Well, because this was a few weeks after. Well, I'm just going to backtrack for your listeners in terms of what happened after Dublin. So I was pretty much sort of denounced as a traitor and kind of completely overnight become a pariah. But some of them said, "Oh no, we still want to be your friend. We understand you made a mistake. You didn't mean to do it, etc." So I had tickets to Philia, which Philia is a kind of. It's like a Butlins for Terfs, really.
What does Philia stand for? It's like a Terf
No, something in. I can't remember. But it's basically a Terf holiday camp with a few. Well, it's a conference, but it's pretty much exclusively attended by Terfs, and they have like a disco on one of the nights. And I've been there the year before and had a really good time. So I was debating, do I still want to go or not? Because these things happened, but. Few of them who had been friends were saying, yeah, we'll still be a friend, and we'll kind of not let it affect our friendship. Anyway, when I got there, they'd all kind of changed by then. It was about 3 weeks later, probably the worst sort of time period. And so I kind of got there, and some of them were ignoring me, some of them were talking to me, some of them were kind of watching to see what the friends did first. It was always like a bit of a code. Oh, I'm not speaking to her, so I won't now. And then there was one who wasn't part of Women's Rights Network who I'd been friendly with, and she was actually being nice to me and saying, "Look, understand that what you did wasn't that bad. Everyone's overreacted a bit." So I thought, well, at least I got one friend. And then towards the end of Philia, I got a message from the chief Terf saying, "Oh, it's really nice to see you, but I'm finding it difficult to be around you."
Oh, God.
But you know, which is a weird text to get from someone. So I kind of thought, well,
when you say chief Terf, are these like sort of, are you talking sex matters kind of Terf?
No. I'm talking the chief. So this is Women's Rights Network in Manchester. They've got a head Terf who also I won't mention the name of.
I'm looking at the Philia Twitter page, and I quite like some of the messages on it actually, because they do come across on the surface at least as quite feminist and interesting. Some interesting articles.
Well, they can't be openly transphobic because then they get shut down. So it's all very undercover. But yeah, so I got this really weird text message going, I'm finding it difficult to be around you, which is very strange. I'd offered to buy her a pint the night before, and she'd said no, which I'd find it quite difficult to not accept a pint of someone offering me one. Anyway, so I thought fair enough. And then the one I was friends with, we'd agreed to go for a drink after the event finished. Went to meet her, which was in this big Weatherspoons where they all were. So I got a drink. It was I got a drink. Sit with my friend who had said yes, let's meet up, but she was then sat with them because she knew them. I came over and they said, "Oh, you can't sit here. You can't sit here." And I was like, "What?" And they all went quiet, and there was this silence. And then one of them went, "You can't sit here because of what you've done," which was really upsetting. So they literally sent me away from a table where my friend was sat, just because we'd met up with you a month before. So
was that directly related to you having some sort of friendship with me? Because we met twice, you know what I mean? It's not like
no, it was one thing. It was because I'd met you in Dublin in a huge, as I said before, a huge bar in a different part of the bar to where they were. That was it. That was my only crime. But for them, that was, you're a traitor.
Well, to be fair, they did. I mean, they probably thought that you would tell me a lot more because I've never pressed you to send me information about anyone, but I did get some. Yeah. Actually, because how would you feel now? I mean, like when you think about trans rights or trans women or whatever it is, or like, I'm not asking you to like tell me like what your political views are, but you just feel like your view has changed, or you've just felt like you don't need a group of people to let you have that view, because whatever, I'm not somebody that judges people on what they believe in or what they think. It's just when I think people are organizing and they're trying to manipulate, that's when I have a problem with it. So so my view is, for me, there's two definitions of woman. There's the social definition, which is the social role, in this kind of the society says this is what a woman is, and then there's the biological definition, which is what you've got between your legs. If people who are born male want to take the female social role, I don't really have a problem with that anymore. There's something, I still think the sports thing can make things unfair for female athletes, but really I don't really think about it anymore, to be honest. I think I've just tried to move on. You see, some of the things that people talk about, I feel like they're so repetitive and they're so mantric. Do you know what I mean? When it's like, they're not their own thoughts. It's like they're just using hashtags they've found somewhere else, like, keep prison single sex, or they're not actually thinking about the issue. They're just adopting a code. And I thought when I spoke to you, you weren't doing that. I thought you actually were thinking about, even if I disagreed with you were forming your own thoughts.
I think what made me different and what sort of led to the circumstances of me sort of being excommunicated was, I'm quite resistant to groupthink. I can be quite maverick. And what I saw when I was there is it's like you almost kind of do get into this groupthink thing where people want the approval of the people in that movement, in that community, and they become dependent on it. And any independent thought is discouraged. So people just go along with the prevailing thinking, which gets more extreme, and that's how they end up believing that all trans women are sexual predators, for example. And to go against it feels quite like you feel like you can't say something that's different to that. You can't say, oh, actually, maybe Fred's not a pervert, because there's social pressure to think the same way as everybody else.
Well, it's the same with anything. It's like when I speak to trans people and they want to organise politically, I'll say being trans is not an organising principle. Being trans doesn't actually mean anything. Just because I'm trans and you're trans doesn't mean we have anything in common. The thing you should be fighting is misogyny and racism, or any kind of xenophobia, because being trans isn't going to get you through. And like being a woman isn't the organizing principle, because women can be right wing, women can be left wing, women can be authoritarian, women can be nurturing, women can be anything. And it's the same with whether you're trans or not.
Yeah.
So when
And don't forget as well, you get a lot of male allies in the Terf movement who are either husbands or whatever, and they get free pass.
well, there's a lot of creepy
They're allowed
guys around Kellie Jay Keen.
spaces, aren't they? What's that?
I was going to say there are a lot of creepy guys around Kellie Jay Keen who, I mean, you know, she does that Turf Talk Tuesday or something where people
Yeah.
There was one guy that rung up and it was like he was trying to flirt with her and it was just a bit weird. So yeah.
I think there's a lot of it attracts a lot of weirdos, including myself.
I think there's a certain kind of man. There's a certain kind of man that's attracted to kind of an authoritarian woman, if you know what I'm saying.
Do you think it attracts this sort of the male chauvinists who are like, I'll protect women from bad trans people?
It attracts submissive men. That's what it attracts, you know. And
I think it attracts quite chauvinistic men who are trying to, get off on trying to act like they're protecting the women from some malevolent force.
I mean, because I remember having a client once when I was doing sex work, and I showed him because he was asking me about what TERFs are, and I showed him a picture of Kelly, and he was like, "Oh, she's hot." I was like, "Fuck off."
It's like a Marilyn Monroe on a bad day.
Let's not get personal. I mean, the thing is though, right? I think she's really good at marketing. I think that's her strength. And I think if she was selling anything, and if she's willing to go door to door and town to town and put her face on, that is pretty good, you know. But it's just the thing she's selling is not real, you know. The thing she's. Do you remember
the merch? I mean, I think before we went to Dublin, we were sort of bonding over the. You had like badges where it was a cat with a like a dog's bone bow saying dog on it, ropes and things. I mean, brilliant merch. Put her efforts into something else.
I have got some of the merch because I get people to go undercover and go to her meetings. They bring me stuff back. It's like little souvenirs. So yeah, I sent somebody into Nottingham to go, but it's not. I'm not going. I don't call it infiltration. I'm just going. Somebody can go and just get like as a sort of journalist. I never tell anybody to antagonize anyone. I never tell anybody to shout at anyone. I just do like when I go to these TERF meetings myself, I'm never there to upset anyone. I'm just there to be a witness to something, because I feel there's a sort of Louis Theroux side of me, which I don't really feel part of things. I always feel like I'm just watching from the outside. Even when I'm on the trans rights side of things, I never feel a part of that. I always feel like a journalist, because I don't know, I'm just not factional in that way. I believe in what they believe. I believe in trans liberation. I believe in freedom for everybody. But I don't get involved in the banner waving or anything like that.
Yeah. I remember after the
personal ways of doing things.
Yeah, you do. Because I remember after the People's History Museum thing in Manchester, where there was a Sex Matters event there, and then quite a surreal experience in my life, being escorted out of that building by the police with a horde of trans rights people shouting at Helen Joyce.
Yeah, well, I did see that, and I thought when I saw the videos of that, because I know that was like a staged event, they feel like if they're allowed into the People's History Museum, it legitimizes their event, and they can also get some publicity out of it. But what I saw, it looked like a schoolroom full of petulant children. Like drunken girls just not listening to what they weren't listening to the presentation. There was like, it's like a sort of.
It was a bit heavy for a Sunday morning, I have to say.
Yeah, there was like naughty schoolgirls that couldn't keep still.
Yeah, but no, as I say, everything's geared around some social things or something like that. You have people going for a coffee before and a chat, and then afterwards everyone went off to the pub and then you're being escorted there by the police, so it kind of feels exciting. And for a lot of people, I don't think it's about the actual issue. It's about all the kind of feeling part of this sort of special club.
Yeah, I've just been like looking at tweets and looking at the Let Women Speak hashtags as I've been talking to you, and it's like it's always the same things. It's very the messages are very what do you call it, repetitive. And I think that's probably part of its power, you know. So do you have any
Kelly does a little chant at the beginning, doesn't she, about, you know, no, what is it? No woman has a penis.
Yeah.
No man has a vagina.
What do you think the future is for Let Women Speak or Women's Rights Network?
I don't know, because I've deliberately tried to distance myself from it, because it was a very painful experience for me. I was in the movement at the time. I believed in what I was doing, and I felt part of a community, thought I had a lot of friends there, and then the way I was just treated like, you know, an absolute pariah overnight was very painful. And it took me a while to kind of sort of move on from that. So now I don't really keep an eye on. I maybe keep a passing eye on some things like Mumsnet, but
well, I would say, I mean, if anybody did want to get in touch with you, because I was thinking of setting up a sort of Terf recovery program, and
I don't think you'll get in touch with me.
Yeah,
I don't think. I'm probably the only Terf who's actually sort of done this. There probably was never a true Terf in the first place, so I think I'm pretty much in a party of one here, Freda.
Yeah, but I think it's interesting that I think as things have progressed, people were just falling away. They might not want to talk about it, but they will have, you know, got different interests and different friends, because they do fight a lot. They do fight with each other now.
They do. I mean, with any sort of hobby, and you can see it's a hobby for some people. People, you know, interested for a while and then find something else to be interested in. So I've no doubt that people either sort of leave the movement completely or just kind of back down from it through a natural process.
I mean, I think what'll happen is Kelly will just filter herself out. She puts that much filtering on her videos that all you'll see in the future is just her teeth moving up and down, and that'll be it. She'll just do you know that like Andy Warhol print where it's Marilyn Monroe and it just fades out? That'll be it.
You never use filters, do you, Freda?
Eh?
You never use filters, though, do you?
Oh, never. No, never.
Never.
I would never use.
Let's see who's going to have the most filters. Kelly or yourself. Well, I'm just messing with you now.
Anyway, so is there anything you want to add? You know, because you know this. I remember I read your Reddit post a while ago, and do you still feel the same about that? If you were to write this down as a story. You know, what would you know, what would it look like? I'm trying to think if you could say, if you wanted to write an article for a newspaper about what happened to you, what is the takeaway? What is the main?
I think the takeaway is I got sucked into this community, and it was all false.
Yeah,
it was all false, and it was all, you know, very much. It becomes like you can't think differently or go against the grain, and I think that's how people get sucked in and almost trapped in these sort of groupthink movements. So I think if there's a takeaway, it's just to kind of be wise to anything like that, which can seem quite alluring at the time.
Yeah.
But then you lose your independence, don't you? You lose your authenticity.
Yeah, and. I mean, I'm glad that we can still talk like this, because it's like, I think it's really cool how we met. And
someone described it as like Romeo and Juliet.
Oh gosh. But yeah, I think the main thing for me is like, because I've always thought that it was really simple. Like, there's bad people and people that hate trans people, and they must just be all Nazis. But that's the thing with fascism or Nazism. It's like it doesn't really work like that. People are just people and flawed, and weird. And I think that's the problem with having a purity test that nobody can pass. Because like, if you know, a lot of the people, like Alan Joyce, when she got sightseeing looking at porn, I mean, I'm not bothered. Nobody's just, you know, knock yourself out, whatever you want to do, but don't make out other people to be perverts.
No, I mean, I think the whole thing with any extremist movement is you end up homogenizing the enemy and seeing the enemy as all bad, and you know, you lose that fact that there's individuality, and there's probably reasons we've developed that psychological way of thinking because we're tribal animals, aren't we? And in a tribe, in prehistoric times, you're going to see your enemy as bad and want to fight them.
I mean,
I think now that's sorry, on.
I was going to say there are little grifters on the peripheries, like making media content and like exploiting the discord between people. And for political reasons, that's the thing. That's the thing I want to talk about, really. And you can't do it by shouting at people on the internet. That's why I prefer having these one-to-one conversations now, because I think if you can talk to somebody and there's a human story, that is more powerful than having 5,000 followers on Twitter and just ranting all day. Do you know what I mean?
I think what's taught me is that you can't ever just assume people are, everyone who's in this movement are all bad. And I've had it for me. I mean, I've had people who've cut me out of their lives because I joined the Terf movement, and they didn't see the nuance. So it happens on both sides. People are more complex than that.
Well, I hope.
So I'm glad that we both saw that with each other. That actually, you're part of this group. You're supposed to be my enemy, but actually, you're a human being and you're all right.
I mean, we went to that council event together. We went with Alex Bramham, and we went to that council meeting. And see, Alex is somebody that I totally oppose, Alex Bramham, but he's spoken to me, and he's, I just don't get it. I just can't. So it's like sometimes I can't equate the way somebody is on social media with the person I know in real life.
Yeah.
Anyway, but I'm glad.
It's funny how, because he got a lot of flack for speaking to you as well, and it's like they don't want anyone to see you as a human being because that's such a threat. But he got almost like me. He got treated like a pariah just speaking to you.
You never know. In the future, I might be doing one of these conversations with Maya Forstater.
Maybe anything's possible.
And she'll say, "Look, I'm really sorry. I just got swept in, and I was consumed with transphobia. I'm really sorry, Freda."
Yeah, well, if Helen Joyce can be found reading fanfic porn, then anything can happen.
It doesn't help that there are pricks like Andrew Gold offering him money to come and talk, to spiel this nonsense out on a podcast. There's like this whole podcast network that just encourages and they'll call it like a free speech union or the free speech nation. It's like the people that talk about free speech never have anything nice to say, do they?
They didn't like you having free speech, did they?
No.
When you were at the free speech event?
No, I know they shut me down pretty quickly. Anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. I just want to say thank you for taking your time to do it, because it's really nice that you did it, and I hope people listening can get something out of it. But and I'm glad that you're. I hope you have a really good bunch of friends, or you still keep in touch with people that you did like from the Terf world. I don't think there's nothing wrong with still being friends with people, but. Well, no, to be honest with you, I think the minute that they knew that when I'd written that thing on Reddit, they all kind of, I guess, saw me as a traitor, and I'm not in touch with those people anymore, but I'm in touch with the people. I've got new friends now who are nothing to do with this movement, and it's quite refreshing to have a friendship group where there's no politics. So I should have done that in the first place, really. Yeah, or get into basket weaving. I don't know. I mean, I think there is an element of that. Like some people get into hobbies and they go, like say they go mountain biking or they'll go hang gliding. Some people just go out and shout at people in the street.
Yeah. Well, we've all got to find a way to sort of have, connection and purpose. And
another thing is
the way is that.
And somebody mentioned this to me. Do you know where people used to be able to go and see a band for £20? You'd go to like a venue and you'd have a dance around, and then you get on the energy. Nobody can afford to do that now because all the gigs are over £80. So
that's interesting, because I'm going to one tomorrow for it's only £12.50.
Oh, where's that? Don't reveal where you're going, but
I won't. No, it's in a cafe type bar near me. So go small is my advice.
I was going to say, I said, oh, see, you didn't invite me, did you? So you still hate trans people?
Well, there might be some there. I don't know. I went to Kinky Boots last week, so I can't hate them that much. It's a good show, that. I don't know if it's stopped now, but yeah.
Kinky Boots. There you go.
Yeah.
There's a recommendation for my listeners. Go and see Kinky Boots.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
right, Kimberly. Thank you.
Okay.
I'll say goodbye now.
Thank you, Freda.
I'll put the cat
All right
on.
then.
All right, see ya.
Okay. All right then. Bye. Bye.